G'day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Brass on Tap. Thanks so much for joining us. We've got a few people in here, and if you're rewatching this, thanks so much for coming back and rewatching. It's great. As always, just to start with a little bit of parish notices. If you missed out on the first 4 episodes, please head over to the YouTube page. In the playlist there, you will find all the different ones, all the people I've been chatting with. We've got Mike Lovett, Calamau, Chris Castellanos, and Larry Marigilano. And wait, episode 5, my guest, Tom Walsh. Honestly, it's great that I can get some of his time because he's a very busy boy, and yeah, and what a talent. So please, in the next couple of minutes, share this, get your mates along. I want this to be interactive. Please get your questions in. Use this time while we've got Tom to ask you questions. Get them in. Say hello. Do what you need to. Grab yourself a drink, and let's have a great time. But let's get it started. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 5, chatting with the Tom Walsh. If you watch my promo, you know how successful this young gentleman is. He's obviously come through. He's played with The Who. He is growing and growing and growing, and he's also being referred to as the next Jerry Hay. Please go check out his YouTube channel. Because some of the stuff in there is just awe-inspiring, and you can check it out every day and just get inspired by watching all his movies. However, Tom Walsh, let's get him on so we can have a chat. Tom,
hey,
how you doing, buddy? Thanks so much for joining us, mate.
My pleasure. My pleasure. How you doing?
I'm not bad. So welcome to Brass on Tap. For all our viewers out there, we've got some people watching. If you please get your information in. I do like starting at the moment with all my streams, just literally going through the motions of how you are dealing with what's going on right now. So obviously, you know, it's happened. So how has this year been for you, really?
It was a strange start to the year. My other half and I were kind of just looking back, and we decided to take a kind of rather lengthy holiday.
Yeah.
I thought we'd kind of like treat ourselves after like another long year of work, and then suddenly to go from that into nothing, you kind of feel a bit guilty.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was at the start of the year, there was a couple of cool projects in the pipeline, and then obviously the plug gets pulled. I was out in Denmark. Just like 2 days doing a project, and then got booted back from there back to London. But that kind of happened 2 weeks before anything was really announced in England. Wow. So it was an odd feeling. You could kind of feel a wave coming.
Yeah.
And obviously since then, there's been like varying levels of success. Some of the orchestras and bands on the continent have gone back to work, and then they're either still going or they've had different measures to take them back. But yeah, we're all getting on in our own way. It's kind of course, everyone embracing the kind of like new dawn for many to home recording, etc. Transitioning to kind of Zoom lessons, etc. So
yeah, great.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, what a year. It's been nuts. And you just said that you're doing Zoom lessons. So before we move on from that, because someone listening might really want this information, whereabouts, if they want to get some Zoom lessons off you, could they go?
Well, I mean, feel free to, if you're on Facebook now, I'm sure I'm probably tagged in all the appropriate places. I'll try and check all my spam filters once in a while. I know that there was a big Facebook revelation a couple of years ago where everyone saw all these years of missed messages. But yeah, I mean, that's the other thing now. Sometimes I get students that kind of, they'll contact you off Instagram or things like that. So there's all these kind of channels. But yeah, I try and check them all. Well, we don't have anything else to do at the moment. So.
Yeah, I'll try and put a link to your Facebook page as well, and down here when this gets all processed. So that's great, awesome. So I mean, you've had for young 30s. Well, you're 30, aren't you? Is that right?
I'm in my 30th year. I'm clinging on to my
30th year.
20th. Yeah, yeah. I'll be 30 in June.
Hey,
So it's
you're still a baby in this world, and the achievements that you've achieved, mate, have been awe-inspiring. They really have. So tell us a little bit about how you came to be you. Really, like, was there a turning step that inspired you to go? You know what? This is the kind of stuff I want to do. Because like your writing now is just it's like I've stated to everyone, you're coming up as the next Jerry Hay. You're writing lines that could be easily like if anyone didn't know any better, they would think Jerry Hay wrote them. So did you always want to do that, or tell us a little bit how you came to this?
certainly in terms, I guess that probably is, yeah, like you were saying, most of kind of my online presence, I guess, is more geared around that side of performing now. Well, I got bitten by the bug when I first started on a jazz degree, which was kind of a little bit nonsensical because I was a diehard early 60s Freddie Hubbard nut and wanted to basically, through a lot of good luck and a lot of people's time and patience with me and steering me in the right direction through the usual, I'm sure we'll come back to talk about it, but through the usual Nigel, and I was lucky to do the Junior Academy Junior Jazz course.
Yeah.
And went to study at the Royal Academy of Music with Gerard Presenter was my professor for the first year,
wow.
which was kind of pretty life-changing, just hearing his sound.
He's a monster.
Yeah. But then I remember exactly where it was, and of course I think that's the amazing thing with Jerry and that horn section's legacy is you may not have heard of them, but you've heard them. And it's one of those things where, I think probably, subconsciously in the background, those sort of type of playing was seeping in all along. But I think a lot of people have the same epiphanal moment. I kind of really sat down and listened to that Solly in Working Day and Night off the Michael Jackson the Wall record, and it hit me like a freight train. It was just like, whoa, what's that? That's not basic bebop enclosures. That's some high-powered, trumpet playing. So as soon as I heard that, it kind of, I don't know, I guess it kind of instilled a bit of a split focus in what I wanted to do. Certainly, it was confusing. Whether would kind of almost be taken away from the small group improvisational aspects of it. But then, of course, you realize that there's only so many ways you can skin a cat, and to be able to play that type of thing well enough, you have to just make sure that your trumpet playing's together. So I guess it sent me on more of a kind of technique drive. In tandem with the musical study.
I mean, that's amazing. I mean, you mentioned Nigel, and I mean, I remember when I first got to this country, I came along. I was technically too old for Nigel, but I wanted to check out what Nigel was about. And you were playing, and then that time, and it was a monster band when I came to check it. I was just like, holy smokes, all you youngins, and it was awe-inspiring. So when I was chatting to Callum Ow, on a previous interview, he was saying that Nigel sort of set him down. He'd pump out all these arrangements and stuff. Were you arranging at that time, or I mean, I'm guessing you were in at that point, giving him the good critiques.
I was, yeah. Well, I think I remember catching that the interview that you did with Cal, and he was talking about the years. It's always, you're always looking back on it, like through his rose-tinted glasses, and it was an amazing era of players, but then most of the eras were as well. But no, Callum's, I think I think we're roughly the same age. I think he might be a year or two older or something, but he was, prolifically writing from about 16, and he was in the band before. So, without a doubt, kind of like the young arrangers, British arrangers like Callum, Tommy Lawrence, that had charts in the pad. They, we were kind of subjected to their charts, but it kind of, we were just trying to play the craziness that they were writing down on the page. And they're both incredibly fine writers. And I don't know, the foolishness of youth. I mean, I think it's one of those sort of things. You kind of look back at some of the pieces in that pad, and it kind of, I'd hate to play them now. It would be you just kind of got by somehow. Yeah.
Well, not to jump forward a little bit, but I mean, you've posted some stuff on YouTube, like when you've written some stuff, and it's these horn lines, and and I'm sat there, and I always know when you're your YouTube link goes off. Ding! It's like, oh, here we go. So I like check it out, and you put up some stuff, and I'm just like, okay. Like, do you ever, like I'm sitting there going, all right, I'd want to sit down. I'd want to get that the day before, sort of thing, if you know what I mean. Like, I'd like to look at that before I walk into a studio. So do you write these charts knowing that you'll have to sort of look at it, or do you sort of just write and go, yeah, I can smash that out anytime, sort of thing?
One of my worst qualities is that I can be a bit of a last chance saloon with that. So I work well to deadlines, and usually I'll kind of book the players for something before I've even finished it. So no, I don't really. I'd say for the most part, I don't really. These days, you kind of, a bit like Jerry's always said in interviews I've seen with him. I guess by the nature of the beast, as a trumpet player, the lines you're kind of conceiving are kind of they sometimes sit well on the instrument. Sometimes it takes a little bit of work.
Yeah.
But it's just a mixture of kind of just foolhardy. Sometimes you can kind of trick yourself into playing things you never thought you could. It's a bit like those moments improvising where you kind of do something nuts and you kind of like, I wouldn't want to see that written on the page. I guess in a kind of foolish way, I've tried to kind of bottle that type of sound.
Yeah.
But then, you've got to not only record it, but then everyone has to get it, and then you double track it, and then,
Yeah.
But it's much the same. I mean, I kind of, whatever kind of craziness I can kind of come up with that seems to, some tunes provide more of a gift for that type of
course, yeah,
liking than others. But,
I mean, if you would indulge me, I'd love to play that Hornhouse video again, if you don't mind, just to give people an example, because it's a hell of a video. Right, everyone, just
took more than a couple of takes, as you might imagine.
Well, get ready for some madness. Here's a minute of madness. Holy smokes, man. What a section.
Lots of notes, isn't it? Yeah.
Like, I know you said a couple of takes, but I mean, something that's always impressed me with you. Oh, by the way, Mike Davis chopped in. He just,
oh dear.
He says, that never stops you from writing it.
He knows the pain. Bless him.
I mean, he's a monster as well. I've seen a couple of videos with you got him in.
Oh, yeah, man.
Yeah.
He's one of the best I've ever sat next to doing all this sort of stuff. So he's the only one that kind of, there's a whole bunch of us that have kind of done it over the years. But, these are the kind of like the weird hit squad that you assemble that are stupid enough to get in a room and slog it away just for the love of it. It's kind of...
There's something to be said about it, though. And this is the way the day and age is going. And sort of like you write it, then... well, you find the people that play it. Like I personally don't think a ceiling should ever be written. If you can think of it, I'm sure there's someone out there that can play it. I mean, between you, Mike Davis, and all the other guys, you get on there.
I mean, we're super spoiled. I'm sure like a lot of your guests have been saying, it's kind of, we're very lucky to be a kind of tiny part of certainly the scene in this city. And the camaraderie has always been pretty amazing. Yeah. Everyone's kind of looked out for each other for the most part. There's not super amounts of kind of jostling for kind of top billing or anything, because there's so many there's a variety of ways of making a living. Again, maybe there could be a time capsule when we're past kind of resume. But it's
you got some. It literally just nailed on the head. I think being surrounded by these players, and sometimes you can forget how lucky we are, really. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the fact that you're coming up with these writing, like, and one of my favorite things you do, you always love that duplet feel. and I know it's always coming in that, you know,
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for him, like, it's gonna come, you know. So
I don't know why.
what inspires you? Like, where has this come from? You know?
I remember kind of like that when that album came out. I mean, that's kind of probably one of the very. I try not to kind of. I've tried to make the transition from doing horn covers as of now, and I guess kind of over the last couple of years since Nickel and I, the trombone player who was connected to that torture just there, since we've shared a studio, we've kind of ended up doing many more kind of professional engagements, I guess, as opposed to there kind of came a conscious transition between kind of, all right, I was using kind of always writing along to pre-existing tracks that were kind of like in the UK top 40 or whatever, and you could find some space and you hone your craft and try and write what you see fit, and then hopefully there comes a transition point where you get to do it. But that was kind of when that album came out. I was listening to it a lot when I was running, and I have no shame in admitting, actually, I think that particular track I probably got some software, and I think I probably slowed it down to like 90 or 80% speed before I could really kind of start to hear some lines on that. It's kind of, it was quite hard to kind of hear how certain. I wanted to put some like harmonic rubs and things like that in there, and it was kind of quite hard to hear it kind of like that tempo. So I wrote slightly slower but then of course, you know, again, that's, you know, that's all very good and well getting used to writing along to it, hearing it slower. Then we had to do it at speed.
Well, this is it, isn't it? Like it's you can write what you want at a certain speed, but when it comes to putting, it's like, holy smokes! But yeah,
got to take training wheels.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got some. There's some people commenting. You've got Nathan Samuelson. He says phenomenal playing. Jerome Hayes passed. He says great stuff. Jess Redmond's come in, said that was incredible. Brian Davis dropped through saying ridiculous playing and writing as usual, Tom. And Callum Connell says, hey, Tom, I hope you're well. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining. Please, get the stuff up. If anyone's got any questions, please get them in so Tom can answer. Cool. So, we dived into just the scratch of the surface of some of your arranging going on. Obviously, before you even got into all this, you are a very successful trumpet player. Like some of the people that you've been gigging with and backing. And, I mean, looking at your CV, you've done anything from leading a big band to leading Scottish National Jazz Orchestra to WDR to you've played with the RPO, the English National Ballet. Like, you've got a massive bag of hats, dude. So, you know, for our young guys out there, or even our, you know, mature guys, whatever, is there a bit of advice, like how you would start changing your hats and getting themselves out there to try and you know, open the doors for some places?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, there was a big pivotal change in my playing, and if he is still listening, you know, he knows what a hero he is to me. But Jerry Hay was very kind. I was able to go over and study with him. I met him actually nearly 8 years ago in London when he was recording. It was kind of an all-star trumpet section he was recording. He was orchestrating for a film. But then I later went and took a couple of lessons with him and Gary Grant and all the people I'd listened to on records. And their approach and their kind of ethos to the trumpet was really something else that I'd never experienced before. And the level of dedication, I mean, I'm not saying, you know, of course, we've had all these luminaries like, you know, Cy, Mike, John Barkley, Derek Watkins. We've got players here. But I think it was great to kind of almost see how impassioned these kind of heroes of yours, some of the most recorded trumpet players of all time, they were still working on it and in love with the instrument as much as they were from day one. And I think just from hearing those two players in particular, Jerry and Gary, and I had a great lesson with Wayne Bergeron too, hearing their playing in a room, it kind of was a bit of a eye-opening thing of like the sound that they made kind of suddenly made sense where it wasn't defined by genre, maybe. It was kind of like make a really good trumpet sound with a really amazing fat core to it. I guess, you know, if you want to be analytical about it, it's just kind of like the attack and the release of the notes are kind of like the only thing that you have to work on. So it's very kind of you to say that I'm versatile, and of course we all try to be, but you know, it's the same stuff that I have to kind of keep in check. If I end up doing something that's out of my comfort zone, it's usually, you know, a production matter or things like that. But it was very inspiring to kind of take a new look a bit older and a bit more mature, a bit less impatient, maybe, at some of the kind of more at the kind of more classical sort of studies. So like a lot of the Bill Adam kind of
Yeah.
routine exercises that I massively subscribe to. I mean, that's all. I like how it's a collection of exercises, and you're not really. I've always, it's nice to not have to think about the trumpet in terms of do this physically. You're actually just you're following a greater good being
Yeah.
the sound. So
I mean,
yeah,
there's definitely something to be said about forgetting sometimes of this. You've done the hard work. Just now you're on the gig. Just lay it down. Now, again, you've only just touched on your little trip that you did over there with Jerry and Gary. And I mean, when I saw that photo, I was just like, wow. Like, it gave me chills, man, just seeing over there. Yeah. Like, what was one incredible thing of watching these monsters play? Like, was it one of those situations? Because, like I had the pleasure of watching Derek play Hairspray. And the biggest thing I picked up from that, he never overdid anything. He never had to. He played just perfectly. It was, and I'm guessing in the studio over there with these ridiculously experienced guys, I'm guessing regardless of range, regardless of what it was, like, just tell us, like, what's one thing that you noticed that, say, guys that won't get this opportunity to hear it?
I think probably certainly the first time I heard Gary before the lesson was probably a couple of days before, and he invited us to sit in on I think it was a Simpsons session. Right. So my best mate Ruben Fowler was next to me, and it was kind of surreal. I remember, it was Charlie Davis and Rick Baptist were on that session, and Charlie Davis just turned to me, and I was doing the gig up in Scotland, and so Charlie said, "Oh, so do you like Scotch?" And then in between every single take, he was just showing me this little online dictionary of Scotch. It was hilarious. He was going, "Have you tried this one? Yeah. Have you tried this one? No." I mean, it was hilarious. And then, of course, trumpet up and they're into a take. But the thing for that, for me, actually, was kind of, I mean, obviously, that was in a huge scoring stage. I think that was in the Fox stage. And it was just, a bit like some of those kind of like scary rooms in London, like in Abbey Road Studio 1 or an Air in the hall. Yeah. Your sound lingers for like 3 or 4 seconds afterwards. So you've got to kind of just forget that. Splits don't sound good in that room, but
that must happen. Like, come on, you've done enough gigs. Do they happen enough?
I think I think we were just a little bit starstruck by the idea of not only it being the Simpsons, but then Gary's old pals with Alf Klaus and he kind of like bandies us in like kind of like two little sheeps into the control room, and we meet the composer of the Simpsons, and you're like, oh, hi. But no, the thing that kind of really got me there was how I think Gary had a couple of pseudo classical solos, but he never kind of over blew his sound. Yeah. But it was just the beauty of the sound. That was something that I guess we're all used to hearing the Hay horns and everything, but Gary's done some of the most beautiful, solo trumpet things on film scores, as has Jerry and all of those guys. I think, I'm sure it's something we'll come on to talk about, but the whole pigeonholing aspect, a lot of the time you're only seeing
happens people, too many times.
Yeah, well, no, it's not. I'm sure that they've not been pigeonholed because they've had an amazing and variety of stuff in their career. But in terms of you kind of sometimes you kind of get those moments where you're like, oh yeah, you're a world-class musician. You can turn on that thing,
Yeah, well, that like when I was saying, happens too many times. I think it's actually a personal perceptive. So I find a lot if someone goes, someone will go, oh, have you ever heard Jerry Hay or whatever, or they might say, have you ever heard Tom Walsh? And say you've put out just a load of videos of you playing high. Yeah. As an example, and they'll be just like, oh, he's just a high player. It's like, no, there's more to it than just that, Yeah. And it's something that needs to be addressed. Like there's massively in the professional world, those guys like Wayne Bergeron's great because he does loads of master classes, and he has even admitted himself sometimes he's been booked on a lead chair, and he's just turned around and gone, this is it's half classical, so I'm going to give that. And he's even gone and asked and said, can we split the lead money, because he's doing half of it and I'm doing half of it, and that's the greatest thing about music, I think, is the whole, that's humbleness, no one's here to outplay anyone. Everyone's just here to make great music. And that's what I love about it personally.
We're not saving lives.
Well, exactly.
So, yeah, it's hopefully enhancing it somehow.
Yeah, and that this world would be a horrible place without music. Let me tell you,
Yeah.
as you know, we had a few people comment here. Daisy Spears has said, "Don't
No, not
forget
that one.
the milk."
That's my lovely other half.
Yes,
I knew there's going to be something sarky in there.
yeah, of course. Ronnie the Fiddle has come out with "Out of Your Comfort Zone," like Handel, Holverson, perchance.
Oh, yeah, anything. Who are those guys? Yeah, no, yeah.
And Davian White has said, says, "Is it true that you once played an impromptu version of My Failing Valentine in Portobello Road restaurant, reducing those present to tears?"
This is that's Daisy's cousin. You can, in case you hadn't imagined, yeah, Daisy. I'll remember the milk if you just remember to take a nice swig of that gin you're clearly drinking. She's walking with her cousin down the south coast, so yeah. Yeah, that is true. Actually, that was kind of like pre-lockdown. Yeah, it's one of those. Yeah, I think we probably had enough wine in an Italian restaurant for me to be prompted to get my trumpet out.
Brilliant.
It's never a good idea. Never a good idea.
No. I got to admit, I was very on the tipple after gin one time. I'm not going to say where I actually was, but I remember there was this little trio just set up in the corner on this little stage, and you get the elbow. It's like, dude, go play with them. I'm like, no, I'm drinking gin. No, I ain't. No, it's almost 6 gin. You're all right, mate. You're all right, mate. And he kept going, no, do it. Anyway, needless to us say, I go to the toilet and they've gone up and gone, oh, we've got a guy that can come. It's like, come on, man. But these things happen. And I agree with you. Some things just shouldn't happen.
Yeah, I mean.
Oh, sorry about that. I pushed the wrong way. Here we go. Mike Lovett dropped by. Hi, Mike. How you doing? He says group hugs. Hi to the both of you.
Hi, Mike.
Ronnie the Fiddle has come back with "Tell That to the Tories."
Yeah.
Jerry Hay has commented. Jerry Hay says there's never enough wine, and that's very true, Jerry. And Christoph Gomes says trumpet, not have money.
I mean, that sums it up at the moment, especially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned a little bit about Bill Adams. Now, something they might not know about you, Tom, is that you, Ruben, and I think it might have been James Copus, but I can't remember. Correct me if I'm wrong. You started a Trumpet Tuesday, which I haven't seen a post for ages.
Yeah. Welcome to my world of never quite completing things that I had on the mind. Yeah. Trumpet Tuesday, which I think has probably been now nabbed from probably anyone in the last decade. I didn't check to see if that was a name or anything, but no, that was basically on the back of those lessons in America that Ruben and I had. I think we were just really fired up to practice again, and
it's great.
Thanks to those guys. And it just meant that, I think there was a number of different misconceptions that those American lessons taught me in terms of, you kind of almost felt like trumpet was never a group sport until you got into a big band section or something. It was kind of, but the fact that, it was, Hoggy, Ruben and myself, who, of course,
George Hogg, of course. Sorry, not James Copus. Yeah, George Hogg.
And, we'd all come off the same jazz course at the same college by happenstance. And, we just met up and it was great. I'm not going to lie. There was some pub sessions afterwards. You'd feel like you cracked something and then go and undo hard work. But no, there was honestly like a big kind of period of growth at that time. And I know Ruben had just kind of started doing a lot of pop work, and he was just on tour with Bloom of Faith and Boy George and that crowd, like playing arena gigs. And there was nothing that made me kind of. There was no more real world scenario than kind of. I remember going to watch him at the O2, and suddenly he was smashing out double C's where he'd never done that previously. Not that it's about the high notes, but I know for Ruben that was kind of. But it was massive, and it was really cool to see that. And there was certainly a couple of moments. I remember Hoggy and I were on a gig, and kind of I've got like a limit to my range, and I guess the handy thing about kind of doing the project studio work is sometimes you can just go at it until you get it, rather than the actual studio kind of one take scenario. Yeah. But there was one time where it was Callum's big band gig, and we did the Luck Be a Lady famous chart, the Sinatra, Sinatra the Sands version or something, and I got lumbered with the lead part, so I gave the B flat octave. Gave that bit a go, and for some reason, probably the first time ever, after the back of practicing a lot, and it just kind of it managed to come out, and then I think Callum wheeled round and a couple of other people, and I just shrugged my shoulders. I was just like, oh, I don't know, I wasn't expecting that either. So it's kind of,
but
there were all sorts of
you've just
benefits to doing that.
yeah, you've just proved that literally. Like I talk a lot with people, like especially like old mates. I do it whenever I'm around. I love it. I love getting together, and over a beer, you subconsciously just chat, and you come up with, oh, I've tried this. Have you tried that? I don't know. And I mean, you know, a lot of people go, oh, geek talk or whatever, but it's how we improve as musicians. You know, we're always talking about this kind of stuff. And as you said, some days, like I could be sat there and, you know, and it doesn't work. It's like you sat there and then, but all of a sudden you're just like, it does work. Like it just, you keep at it, and then you're on a gig. And as you said, you just go for it. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, everything's working. Oh, here we go. You know, and then it's great. You can access these other stuff just by trying something. So the reason I brought it up, is because I saw a Bill Adams video. You did a few of them on doing a lot of the sort of lead pipe stuff and all that kind of stuff. So just for our sort of guys who don't know about Bill Adams and everything like that, fancy just giving them a little, you know, maybe just a little advice of how they would approach, maybe not just Bill Adams, just, you know, like just a couple of things that you have done to make you the trumpet player you are today.
Sure. I mean, when it comes to the Bill Adams stuff, I mean, it's kind of, I only claim to, you know, I'm lucky that I studied with Jerry, who's one of his, you know, his all-time number one, most successful, but got the concepts type student. So it was kind of like learning from the horse's mouth. And I think kind of his legacy was more to do with, just as a pedagogue, he was super inspiring as a human being, rather than the trumpet player. And I think there was a lot to be said about that. My missus is watching, and a lot of my pals are as well. They'll know me. I'm not a particularly Zen character at all. But actually, I guess one of the main approaches to that, his teaching, I think, is to make the trumpet the most Zen thing possible, you know, and kind of, I think these days I try and think of it, it's kind of like a natural extension of, you know, if I had my trumpet in my hand, and don't worry for those at the other end of the viewers, it's firmly in its case right now. But it's kind of, it's an extension of yourself, and you want to kind of feel comfortable with it. But I just quite liked how it was a stripped back approach to thinking. There was less physical talk, and there wasn't any talk of, you know, where you should be playing or changing your embouchure to accommodate things like vowel sounds or anything like that. You were actually just, you know, in a very massively layman's way, you're following each note by note, and you're trying to replicate that sound.
Yeah.
And make a semitone. It completely changed the way I play intervals. You know, Jerry was the first person to diagnose that I was closing my throat when I was kind of, you know, slotting my partials. It's like the difference between going, and then kind of, you know, my missus is currently in an opera, so it's been great. I've been able to kind of tag along, and she plays principal viola in opera, so I've been able to see all these incredible opera singers, and, you know, and
there's something to be said about that.
I have to apologize for this, but it's the whole kind of there's my little falsetto break. But in terms of, there was never any kind of like change in what they were doing with their throats, and everything was open. So for me, it helped diagnose that my throat was the thing that was clamping down, as opposed to anything that was going wrong here, or, you know. So it was more of a mental thing once I kind of beaten the physical aspect of it. So that was a big change.
I mean, there's something to be said. I was very similar when I was younger. There's something to be said about until someone tells you, you can't hear it. You can't hear when you engage that throat. Like, and I've even, because I had it, I told other people. And sometimes it's just before you play. Sometimes you go, you know, but not many people realize they're doing it, you know. So, you know, it's to our viewers out there. Sometimes it is great to just have someone else just beside you, like Tom does. He's got his mates, and they're all around. And don't take someone's criticism as a bad way. Like, if, you know, my wife always corrects me sometimes, like because I've been off center since I started, you know, and I've moved it to the middle. And sometimes when things happen, I get little spots on my lip or whatever. Sometimes I'll creep back, you know, and she'll be like, "You're playing on the side," and I'll be, "Oh, okay." Do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes just getting those people, you know, like it's great. But just listen to the people around you, because they're not there to make you or hinder you. They're there to help you. Everyone's here to help each other. We're all trying to make life easier for each other. Let's just go through some of these people who commented. Andy Sewitt's turned up, and he said, he says, Tom, I watched you with my son Dan in Ijo many years ago. You were amazing even back then.
Oh, that's very sweet of him. I know his son's doing very well. He's out in LA, I believe, now, like working for Hans Zimmer and co. So it's all right. Essex boys have done all right. They've done
okay. We got Christoph Gomes came back and said the Tom Walsh blues.
My daily life.
Gary Sculford's come in and he says, is this trumpets only or sop players allowed in?
Hello, Gary.
In this country, yeah, anyone's allowed, man. And Judy Spears obviously says, hey, great. Part of the Spears massive listening down in Devon.
It's a family affair.
It certainly
Hello,
is. So okay, so we've dived into a bit of Bell Adams, and we've dived into obviously the way you're writing at the moment. So the one thing I've noticed about watching a lot of your videos is how, I'd like to say effortlessly, because that's how you make it look. But obviously you tell me. But the way you can just literally go from this range to this range, and yet nothing moves here. So for people that don't quite understand, because, there's loads of techniques out there. There's pivot technique, people up and down and everything like that. There's also upstream techniques and stuff, like you got, I think Tom Rees-Roberts uses like a balanced embouche sort of thing. Like that boy is just phenomenal. Thomas Gantz uses 3 different types of embouches. Don't know how he just makes it look so fluid, but apparently that's from word of mouth. That's what he does. And yeah, but how about for you? Like everything for you just seems to be here. And so how did you go approaching being able to play your low stuff there and your, not even extreme register, just up there, just nothing moves? What's your view on that?
I'm probably exactly the wrong person to ask this question. It's not that at all. It's just a case of, one of the things I've noticed is I've never consciously gone through any embouchure changes. And, I had kind of earlier in kind of college, Mike Lovett kind of obviously amazing advocate of and kind of has benefited from the
doesn't get much better.
But I mean, from kind of doing the Maggio method, it was a weird decision for me, because I kind of felt like it might not have been the way that I was going to necessarily progress most logically. So I kind of I found myself maybe changing more than I naturally was.
Yeah.
But just in terms of the physiology of the trumpet, I mean, I quite like to think of it in terms of, as long as it sounds good, if it looks neat, then that's a bonus. I mean, and I remember seeing photos of all your trumpet heroes when I was in my teenage years, and you'd be like, oh God, they look so cool when they play. Yeah. But then, it kind of, I was pretty, I was hell bent on the idea as well, as long as it sounds good, because there's also a couple of players that I know that make it look not so easy, but still sound great, and massively. I think that could be the thing that kind of speaks most. But I think there's all sorts of things. My jaw must have changed shape a huge amount in my 20s, because
teeth a big one.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of, all those years of kind of college cider rotting through my
it gives you an extra octave.
No, but it's it's kind of an odd one. I mean, I know that kind of a lot of my pals kind of, they talk about that, and they kind of go, well, that doesn't look, that doesn't look like you're doing anything there. And it's kind of like, if that's a bonus. I mean, I try and think of whatever the air has to do to get out in a kind of very logical, straight direction. Yeah. Then I'm just going to let this do whatever it has to do to kind of accommodate that. So, I'm sure that if I'm swapping 2 octaves suddenly or something, it's going to look different. But
that's great to hear, because let's face it, in the end, there comes a point where, as I've said previous, it's overthinking. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's when I find things go horribly wrong, because I'm like, oh, something's gone wrong. So instead of, like Chris Castellano said in the last episode, most of the time when it goes wrong for him, it's his breath, it's his breathing, it's his just taking that in and just blowing. Sometimes that's what it is. It's nothing to do with your setup or anything here. It's just he's not blowing enough. And that is, there's something to be said about that. That's that's awesome.
One of the things I massively remember from my lessons with Mike at college, Lovett, he was talking about the kind of the breath being a relaxed kind of thing. And I kind of, I kind of like liken it to like a cricket analogy. I think that's how he described it. You want a cricket bowl to be quite a smooth motion. You don't see bowler running up, ready to kind of like, to throw the ball, and then just suddenly pause halfway through, then release it. It's kind of, it's got to be like a one kind of motion. So, and actually kind of, again, sometimes I kind of practice by tricking myself. So, if I find myself kind of bricking it in an orchestral environment and you've got 100 bars to wait before a really pearly entry, I think sometimes one of the worst things you can do is just kind of like eye up those 100 bars and count down and feel your body fill with more and more tension until you're like, But there's kind of like sometimes you have to kind of just pretend that you're talking to your pal next to you and go, oh, whoops, I've got to come in.
Yeah.
And it's that sounds like the famous Eric Watkins stories. He used to kind of like crack a joke just as the click was going in, and all the other trumpet players would kind of corpse. Yeah. And then he'd kind of put his game face on, be laughing, and then just turn it on and be, so many funny stories of that. But it's the concentration thing. I mean, Simon Gardner, one of all of our heroes over here, absolute legend of the trumpet, and kind of, I think just talking to him about he was like one of the most amazing real life examples of consistency in a studio scenario, and kind of he'd smash out top G's like 20 times in a row at kind of 10 a.m. and not really bat an eyelid. Again, not looking like he's doing anything. No. But it's kind of silly, and as cliched as it is, it's just a concentration thing. There's so many numbers of combinations of notes that can come out, but if you've got an idea of what your sound is before it comes out, if you know what every single note in your register sounds like, and you can almost imagine it, it's kind of like, I think I was watching the Michael Jordan documentary about the Chicago Bulls.
Oh, I need to watch that.
Yeah, and it was kind of like he was kind of, there was a really cool analogy from that he was just, I think someone said, someone was asking me a question, say, and I think the response was, why would I think about missing the shot before I've even taken it, or something like that? Yeah. And there was I thought that, that's exactly the same with trumpet. If you're kind of psyching yourself up to go, this is difficult, then chances are you're going to make it sound difficult. But mind trickery.
It is, massively. And I mean, there has to be something in your head as well that surely, like, how do you approach it? If you see a note, regardless of range or regardless of where it is, obviously, are you a big factor of hearing it in your head? That's what I am.
I mean, I'm kind of lucky that I've got perfect pitch, kind of from like a lot of singing as a kid and kind of being a little choir boy. And kind of, so my ears were kind of always pretty attuned to kind of like knowing where pitches are at, certainly.
Yeah.
But physically, if I am going to do one thing whilst approaching like a difficult high entry, say, then I will literally kind of, there's two ways that, I demonstrate it quite a lot when I'm teaching. Like, there's two ways of getting the same note, and you can get a successful result. You can either incorporate loads and loads of tension whilst doing it, or you can do it the easy way, which means you're not going to get as knackered in a kind of in a environment. So you just have to try and will yourself on to kind of follow the muscle memory that we've all spent thousands of hours kind of honing. You've got to trust your body with it to a certain extent.
Massively. So just quickly, we've got Ad. He says one of my favorite trumpet players and a top bloke.
Hello, Tom.
Nathan Williams has come and said, Tom, you're on bloody telly. Nobody I'd rather have screeching on my tunes. So obviously Nate's a legend.
So I mean, a vehicle for all of our most crazy stuff yet. So it's kind of, he's a very close musical compadre. I'm very glad to have met him. I think that's, one of the weird things, probably met him virtually. And
brilliant.
His music is really kind of amongst some of the funnest stuff we've had a chance and a challenge to work on, because he knows his harmony, and it feels like all of our influences have aligned. So it's that's some of the stuff. And Mike and James Copus and all the other trumpet players on we've got through it without those guys. I mean, bloody hell, they're especially kind of these days. I think I tend to, just like Jerry and Gary back in the day, I quite like writing two trumpets up the octave. So it's a hell of a sound, but it can be. It can be quite squirrely. So there's no such thing as like a lead trumpet in a horn section setting, because you're both going hell for leather and kind of hoping for the best. But
there's no such thing as an easy job in a horn section. So considering that was a nice swift, thanks very much, Nathan, for doing that. I want to move on to a bit of Hornhouse. that you've set up. So obviously you've moved studio. So where are you now?
We just moved the other day. Just kind of plumbing it in at the moment in Ealing Film Studios,
There you go.
which is amazing because this is where I live in town. So it's kind of, it was just kind of fortuitous, but hopefully it means that, God forbid, like a second lockdown proof, it means I get to kind of still walk to work there. And, it's been nice. Since everything's eased, we've got back in the room and we've kind of done a couple of things like kind of with people in the room, and that's something that's completely underrated. I've gone insane from like 4 months and my long-suffering girlfriend from kind of like her second bedroom, turning it into like a kind of trumpet torture chamber. But it's kind of just the ability to hear the sound unfold with other people next to you is just something that we're all missing massively. But sorry, I've gone off topic. The studio is
That's all right.
Yeah, it's mainly me, Nickel. We always get some other horn replicates in there, but I've started doing more kind of writing and production kind of work in terms of arranging for different larger ensembles now, and orchestral and big band stuff, and which is that's been amazing to do. So hopefully
any Tom Walsh big band on the horizon or anything like that?
Not necessarily. I mean, I've got to try and work out how it's going to get off the ground. But the project that I got booted out of Denmark to do was a tribute to Jerry Hay.
Oh, that's amazing.
Gerard, it's like all these kind of amazing kind of mentor figures in my life kind of all together, really, because Gerard is the jazz drum soloist in that band. Brilliant. And so I got to put all the jazz solos on his part, and it was great to hear him kind of play it. But yeah, so hopefully either in Denmark, that concert will go ahead. I've just kind of, I think I felt a bit kind of, well, just like everyone, when it all happened, a bit dejected. So there's 11 charts of that kind of a lot of his kind of famous hits that are ready to go. They've all been reworked and retweaked slightly. So I'd definitely love to do that, either live or recording it somehow.
Brilliant, yeah.
And I'm just, I mean, Nickel and I have got like a Hornhouse album. I think that is probably going to come out that way. He's been particularly productive with his composing and finishing off old tunes. So we must have, Mike Davis and Andy Greenwood and lots of other sax and
monster,
own victims have kind of been roped into that. But I would have thought that's going to be released at some sort of point.
Great.
Yeah.
So where should people keep their ears down and their eyes obviously on to try and find that stuff when it gets released?
I guess I kind of like tend to just post once in a while on Instagram. There's like a Hornhouse Instagram for that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how we'll release it yet, but it's kind of, there's still plenty of kind of horn section action that's kicking off. We're in there kind of, at least a couple of times a week now. And even if it's just doing stuff like for the love, it still keeps the chops in. I mean, it's quite weird. You're keeping the chops in, but not for any particular gig in particular.
No, yeah. But you've got to be ready, don't you? You just never know.
Well, I was talking about it with Mike. It's kind of like you can operate in short, sharp bursts, but it's the concentration for a couple of hours at a time.
Yeah.
You go back into like a recording studio professionally, which I've done a handful of times since lockdown, and you feel like a toddler that needs like a nap or something like that because you're getting distracted.
Yeah. So, I mean, how would you approach that? Do you surround yourself, like on previous people have said it on interviews, do you surround yourself, say, I'm like, okay, I've got an orchestral or I've got a session today and it's in this style. So do you like chuck something on a radio and play along with it? Is that how you set up for something like that?
I've kind of, I mean, I'm not afraid to say that probably some of the most roasty kind of, certainly film sessions that I've been part of now, it seems to be something that's kind of commonplace in the way that people are writing orchestral stuff for trumpets, certainly films. You can kind of, it starts to become death by quiet notes and death by quiet entries. And it's a case of, I know that Mike Lovett and I had a moment in February for a certain film where it was a case of, it was getting to a stage where it was like breath attacks, and it's like a pinprick if you do it in any other room, but then they're saying, no, do it again. And it just became a bit of a torture kind of scenario. So yeah, certainly if you've been doing a lot of high octane kind of like on your face, really smashing in type work, it becomes quite hard to get that delicate, quiet production that you might need for more kind of like film classical sessions. But apart from that, I've learned to try and trust that my sound, as long as it's all working well.
Yeah.
Like I said, you kind of, it's more the beginning and the end of the notes that shape it.
Yeah.
And the style in between, someone had some good advice once upon a time. I can't remember who it was, but I think we all get scared if we feel like we're approximating a style. You tend to kind of whack on some sort of vib that you think might be appropriate in the style, but it's not quite. And actually, a lot of the time, you're better off just relying on keeping your sound with pretty pure, no vibrato, and just let your sound do the talking. And I think so. Yeah, these days it's kind of I try not to kind of get too phased by it. The great trumpet player Maurice Murphy had a really kind of proper kind of ballsy approach to doing film work. He never used to turn the pages of kind of whatever he had. Let's say he had a 12-hour session or something. He'd never turn the pages to find out what's
coming up.
Because it was kind of like I guess it is kind of macho in a way, but kind of like, well, I can either do this or I can't. So there's no point in spending all day kind of fretting about it. So I'm sure I check the odd thing if it's like super, important, but it's kind of you start to know where your kind of level is.
And that's great. That's super advice, that, because in the end, too many people they worry about what's coming up, as you said previously, and they're just like, oh my God, like, oh, that's a top C, what happens if I split that? Especially if you're in a studio, it's like, don't even think about it, just play your music. But I can't imagine getting a whole book and then just not seeing what's in it. You've got to flick through.
I'm not going to say that I'm not that confident. Of course. It's a nice story. Maybe one day. Yeah, but, maybe one day there'll be no book to turn over, and then I won't look at that.
Well, as Wayne said, how can you delegate if you don't know what's coming up?
That's true. That's true. Just like, probably when the click comes in, probably go, do you want to do this? Oh.
Yeah. We got a couple of people here. Don't know who Kenwood Chef is. Thanks for coming. Says Tom, never mind the trumpet playing. How's the barbecue coming along?
We had a bumper season of the fire pit in the. Yeah,
did you?
It got to a stage of just like meat coma, though. I think we had to. Daisy and I went on a veggie week, and it still felt like our arteries were clogged.
There's nothing wrong with that. You got to push the boat out, don't you?
No one wants a halloumi burger. Don't. Yeah.
Aliadez turned up. He said, "Great stuff, Tom. Really insightful, and have given me a few ideas. Thanks, guys." So cheers for coming, Ali. So we've dived into. I don't want to keep you all night, mate. I mean, I could talk to you all day. So you've moved over to Ealing in Hornhouse. Now, I've seen a few videos of you. Some questions I've always had. Oh, why does he do this? Or why is this adding so much of an effect? Now, this is obviously something, I haven't told you what it is yet, but this is obviously something that that you've grown up and experienced, and this is why you put it in your recordings. But double recording, overlaying, double panning right, panning left. You did a video on it, and it was really insightful because so immediately the next day I had a phone call from someone and we had a chat about it, and you've always helped me out. I remember I contacted you on lockdown and I just went, dude, I need to get something because everyone's now recording inside, and you helped me out. I can't thank you enough. So you're always so helpful. So just for our viewers out there, what is the benefits of say panning left, right, double recording?
I think it's kind of not even instrumental, like trumpet specific, to be honest. I think it's just the ultimate exercise in consistency, really. And it was the sort of thing that, you hear it on all sorts of records, pop records. Guitars are going to be double tracked. Vocals are always tracked. Nate Williams, he's a master of
he is,
not only tracking his instruments, but his voice as well. And it just kind of becomes a bit of an exercise in how kind of consistent you want to and how under the microscope you want to put your playing, really, because it can really screw with your ears if you don't get it quite right. But it's a hell of a sound because it literally is just it's like a whole army of instruments coming at you from both sides, But the desired effect is completely there, and it hits you like right in between your eyes, really. It's and it's kind of like more of a horn section specific thing, and not for all types of music anyway. You know, that once in a while we'll do like a more stripped back kind of R&B or kind of like soul tune or something, and it won't require that level of shiny kind of layers or whatever. But it's definitely become. I mean, it's, you know, again, you know, I'm learning the master. You know, Jerry and those guys pioneered that kind of, you know, that way of working, and it's such a distinctive sound. But it just, you know, it just kind of, you have to have. There's some kind of tricks you can do with the inner voicings that, again, Jerry taught me, and he's been, you know, I think it's very important to be as generous as you can with your time and your knowledge, especially in this time, because we're all in the same boat. You know, we're all being, you know, there's no such thing as stature in the business now, or kind of pecking order, because when it comes back to the real world, it's kind of everyone's kind of in the same boat, really. So it's just a case of, I guess I was lucky that I kind of got some of these things down a bit. Maybe like I kind of guess I've been recording from home for nearly 8 years or something like that now, and I'm just become more experienced at it maybe. But you know, the first time I started double tracking, it just kind of, it was like a very unflattering look in the mirror, and just kind of like, you know, is that really what I sound like, warts and all? But it's just as a tool, I'd recommend it to anyone. You know, it's kind of, I could see it working for any instrument or for singers or anything.
Massively, just literally almost imitating yourself, isn't it? Like we spend our lives imitating other people, but trying to imitate yourself, like having it perfect each time, it's great.
And kind of, you know, it just works. It works if you're doing live gigs. It works if you're doing studio sessions, because, you know, you don't know which take is going to be the one they're going to use. So you have to kind of try and recreate it take after take. And, you know, on a live gig, you only get one take. So it's kind
that's it. Yeah.
I kind of try and approach studio sessions a bit more like gigs in that respect, in terms of you have to play a bit of a longer focus kind of game. You kind of, you know, you can't get beaten up by the split notes you kind of clip or things like that. You know, I used to very much be a kind of like slam my trumpet down in the stand if I split a note. And
everyone's been there.
Yeah, in the Hornhouse walls, there's been many curse words. Put it that way. That's kind of much more. That's been much more kind of short bursts of energy, really, until we're completely knackered.
In the end, it's sort of. You've just proven it. Like I bet you there's some young people out there that have watched you and just gone, oh, these guys are like robots, man. They never make a mistake, you know. And it's great and humbling to hear that the guys that you use and all these fantastic guys. So shit happens, you know, as they say, you know. And
you know, I've got no bones with kind of I've got no bones with saying, like, you know, there's so much. No one wants to hear my deleted takes. And unfortunately, I don't have a hard drive full enough for all of them. So it's kind of like, it's, you know, sort of thing that, you know, I think there's a new way of working behind the scenes in project studios, which is much more, there's short bursts of concentration, you know, and kind of, you know, it's the way that a lot of us put our productions together. Like Louis Dalswell does it the same, and we kind of, it is a kind of like perfectionism kind of trait, I guess. You wait until you know you've got something that's like a master performance, rather than going back later, spending loads of time comping it, and you kind of you get it right and then you move on. But again, you know, that's only useful if you're only ever going to be a kind of bedroom studio musician. If you go in with a full orchestra, you have to still have the kind of ability to make it right. So it's kind of it's you know, some people probably would see it as, and that's one of the kind of the top things that you hear about clean recorded performance. It's just like, oh well, it's imperfect, they're robots, and you know, well, let's see them do it live, etc. And you know, that becomes the challenge. But it's always a good challenge to try and,
of course,
you know, recreate. You know, it's something good to strive for, at least to try and do it in the analog way.
Massively. Trevor Myers has come through and he says, "Nice one, Tom."
He can play anything.
Oh,
he can play anything. Speaking of people that, there's no link too hard for Trevor. No. Everyone needs to check out his horn section stuff with Ryan Quigley and
go and check it out. I'm hoping to get all these guys eventually on Brass on Tap so we can chat to them. Gary Schofield has also dropped by and he says, "How have you been getting on playing through lockdown, Tom? We're in a brass band. Haven't been able to play together since March."
Gary and I kind of went on our when life kind of, I don't know, when it was kind of less of a. And my other half went for like a nice camping trip, and I found out he plays in a brass band up north, and I'm sure a damn good one as well. It was, I think, kind of, it, yeah. So my other half has had some orchestral work in, and like in an opera orchestra, but very reduced size.
Mm-hmm.
I think the idea of going back to doing ensemble work is still uncertain when it's going to happen, and it comes in dribs and drabs. There's been a few big band sessions, but again, they've Abbey Road and Air and places like that. But then they've got like kind of 2 meter boxes and sometimes like a feet of plastic between you, and so you're not getting the same kind of oral response that you're used to hearing. So it's just a brave new world for the time being. I think it's just a case of you try and hone your skills at home so that when you go back to some sort of a semblance of it, I think it's always good to know a little bit more about the process from every aspect of the music recorded process. So it's nice that everyone's kind of getting into production and kind of learning how to record themselves, because it means that no one has to throw a hissy fit when their headphones blow up and kind of go, oh, mummy, change my headphones. They kind of know what's going to happen now, and I think that's kind of like one of the good things that will come out of it. But it's there's been maybe, like, I'd say I can count on one hand the amount of times where I've been in a room since lockdown. Maybe in the last 6 months I've played with like 5 orchestral string sections or something like that. When you hear the kind of when you hear it, it kind of moves you. It really does.
It does, yeah.
Kind of like, just people shifting air, moving air in the same room is kind of an experience you can't beat,
I think it's something that we've really all missed, and as you said, when you hear it live again, it's just like, so it's going to be amazing when we can all do that. Just based on that, have you got anything in the pipeline that you know about that is, say, anything outdoors? I know there's a few things going on, or anything that you know of that potentially could be happening for people.
I can imagine, given the right kind of bunch of people, I can imagine freezing my ass off doing some carols with the normal book, maybe at some point in November. Doing that allowed.
Oh, we'll definitely be keeping our eye out for that.
I've not got anything kind of live work-wise in the diary. It's kind of, there's been a couple of, I'm working on a few writing projects now at the moment, and there's a couple of studio sessions coming up and things, but certainly not enough to sustain a job as we know it. So we're kind of relying on something hopefully changing within the next couple of months. And I think obviously a lot of kind of films and TV and stuff are done in London now and recorded in London. And I think they've probably worked through the backlog of projects that were kind of needed to be completed pre-lockdown. And now it's a case of, okay, well, no one's kind of able to go out and kind of shoot any new TV shows or films. So now it's a case of, I predict that there's going to be 101 movies from Pixar and Disney, like all animated, probably in the next couple of years. There's going to be like
they're the only guys that have been able to solidly work, haven't they?
Anywhere where you can kind of do your job from home, I guess. But I think heartening news in terms of orchestras are kind of starting to get tour schedules, and some of the live tours that I know a lot of my pals have had are kind of being moved from, it was originally going to be September of this year, then March 2021. I think now it's looking like summer 2021.
Yeah.
So it will come back, and obviously the whole touring thing was such an earner for a lot of people, performers. I'm just as long as that comes back, and I guess kind of if people want to go stand in a muddy field, they'll just have to do it.
I'd be happy with
that. And kind of have their own little party at Glastonbury after they've taken their Special K and not touched it.
How about Hornhouse? Have you got anything going on? I mean, I definitely saw it somewhere. You wrote and recorded with Seawind, didn't you?
No, I kind of did a couple of tracks with Bob Wilson, the drummer.
That's what it was. Yeah,
and kind of since thanks to the Jerry and Larry Williams connection, I've kind of done a few projects where Larry's kind of hired me to kind of record trumpet, which has been amazing, and it's great to kind of be in touch with, again, all these people that are your heroes that you read on. I'm an absolute Discogs geek, so I'm always looking at the personnel of records and kind of. It's kind of probably a bit of a travesty that I'm not an actual LP collector, because you've got all the names of every. I always geek out with that sort of thing. But when you're kind of starting to kind of work with, albeit remotely, but when you're working with those sort of players, then it's kind of, it just kind of like, it's a bit surreal, but a bit of a dream come true. There is a project that Nickel and I are maybe, it's a case of when the world goes back to normal, but there's a project at Capitol Studios that there's this actor come musician who used to play with Incognito in the Brand New Heavies, and he seems to have assembled, I don't want to jinx it by kind of saying it out loud, but I think hopefully at some point next year, Nickel and I will be going out to do like a recording at Capitol, like in a horn section thing, which would be incredible. But we'll see how it happens. But the lineup for that is kind of pretty mental. Again, a bit of a kind of who's who, like supposedly Steve Gadd and Paul Jackson Jr. and people like that are on board.
Right. That's epic, man.
But I can't, who knows? It's all subject to kind of to change.
Awesome. Right, before, I'm not going to keep you, mate. I literally can talk to you for donkeys. But what we'll do is, how about I get you back in like 6 months or something like that, and we'll chat again, and we'll see what's going on. Yeah?
Of course, yeah.
Before I go into a quick fire session, Barrett Hawkins come on and said, thanks, Ben and Tom. Great to hear this. Bloody good morning listening. Hope all's well over there. Go well. Cheers, Barrett. Thanks so much, mate. It's so good to have you on. So I like doing this little quick fire session, that whatever pops into my head sort of thing.
I hope there are no psychiatrists watching my responses here. In fact, actually, I know there's one actually watching. That's whoops. Okay. Good answers.
Here's my first question that didn't pop in my head, but Ronnie the Fiddle has put it in. He said, tell us about your pink guitar.
Oh, yes, of course. It was kind of like my joke. I did a tour with, again, surreal to think about it, like just this time last year, Mark Knopfler from the Dire Straits, we did like a world tour, and it was incredible. Kind of got to subject, I think we worked out, I managed to subject 750,000 people over that tour to my backing vocals. That's the biggest,
yes.
The biggest about it. Yeah, they had to listen to me sing. And but I was, at one point in time, I was kind of, Mark had gently groomed me to maybe play a primitive bit of acoustic guitar. And so I tried to I purposely, as a bit of a joke to someone with one of the most expensive guitar collections on the earth, I turned up to the first set of rehearsals with a 50 quid plywood guitar, because I thought that might be quite funny. And and it wasn't pink because that had sold out, but unfortunately he could smell the cheap smell of plywood and super glue, and he was kind of wandering around in my direction and kind of like going. But I did get one guitar lesson off Mark Knopfler, which I guess is quite cool.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I can't get my head around that thing. It's a strange wooden thing.
We've well, just to add on to that one, Martin Britt has said, "Singing, prove it."
I did earlier in this stream, but I'm not.
That's true.
You have to pay good money for that in
there
an
you
arena.
Go. If you want to hear Tom sing, send some messages on his Facebook page, and we might be able to get a Patreon thing going and to get him to sing something for us.
God. Yeah. I was going to be the enemy at one point. I was hell bent on a life in musical theatre, and then kind of my voice broke, and I became rather useless at it. So.
Yeah. Oh, apparently when I was in grade 2, I was an amazing singer, and that's why they told my mum to make me into a musician. So I don't know what they're talking about. So, but anyway. Guys, get your questions in while I'm giving quick fire, or else I'm going to let Tom go so we can get back to his wonderful partner and drink some more gin. Okay, quick fire session. What is? Oh, that's a bit too harsh for you. I was going to say, what was your favorite gig? That's too hard. That's too much to decide from. Okay, here's one. What's one of the most, apart from Jerry Hay, one of the most inspiring people you've ever worked with?
That's really tough.
Okay, let me think another one.
Any who's who of the London trumpet scene that I've
fair one.
Just kind of, they've been mentors, certainly. Yeah.
I mean, there's what I've noticed since moving to this country is there's the scene you've got. It's almost like a family. It's incredible. Yeah. It really is. And it's almost like being surrounded by siblings who just offer each other advice and look after each other. And you guys just turn it on every time. It's amazing to watch. So, but yeah, okay, cool. What about, favorite place to have visited and played?
New York, I'd say. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
kind of like, I don't know. There's just the parallels between kind of London and New York. It's such a wicked city, and we played at a couple of iconic venues on that last tour that were just like a bit like whoa. We closed out the tour at Madison Square Gardens, which from a trumpet player from a tiny little town in England, that kind of seems a bit mental.
Yeah. Funniest thing to ever happen on stage?
Oh dear. Well, my trumpet bell came off once from putting a harmony in it. And that was kind of like I'm not gonna name and shame the brand because I especially in COVID times everyone needs a little bit of love. But yeah, I kind of had a special fancy trumpet that didn't have a conventional tuning slide in the right place, which kind of came away anyway.
Yeah.
But I screwed my harm mute in the bell, and then the whole bell section came off. Luckily, it was only 2 tunes from the end or something. So that's kind of I must have spent at least 30 bars going, what? What? Video of it online.
Please tell me that you finished the gig like that as well.
I mean, probably just distracting with the rest of the trumpet section. Going, what the, there's a video of that moment happening.
Is there?
I'll send you a link after. Yeah, it's
right.
kind of
right. Send me the link so I can attach it to the bottom of this this video. From Ronnie the Fiddle, he says favorite pub.
Oh, I just went and visited one the other day in the Cotswolds that was absolutely outstanding, called the Falkland Arms. But in terms of London, here you go. Anyone listening, this is an encyclopedia. Lamb and Flag, Covent Garden, Coach and Horses, which is I think is on just off Drury Lane. The Harp, the Chandos. This is quite embarrassing, actually. It would have been better to give me pub by postcode, probably.
Probably easier to narrow it down anyway.
Either a country pub or like kind of a city, London city pub, just for the memories, probably.
Someone going by Kenwood Chef says favorite cheese.
Oh, Delice de Bourgogne is one thing that I've been enjoying. Some kind of it's like a double kind of milk cheese, I think. Yeah, from Burgundy, which is incredible. Or Lancashire Bomber. Yeah, Lancashire Bomb cheese is ridiculous. It's like kind of like a soft kind of cheddar.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty amazing. I'd like to point out as well. I don't know whether I'm guessing you still are. Are you still a bark artist?
Yes. Yeah. I guess. I think so. Yeah.
So how's just quickly how's it been to be a bark artist, and obviously you recommend them, and
I mean the sound that they make is ridiculous. I mean I don't have a huge amount in terms of. I don't think I've ever had like a kind of. I think I probably have like a very outdated artist page maybe somewhere, and I haven't really done much on behalf of Bark. But it's a case of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And again, it was after America, coming back from there. I never played one of those horns, but for me, it feels a bit like a blank canvas from bottom to top, which maybe some of the other instruments don't have. But yeah, I've got one, and I abuse it. It's probably had about 4 or 5 bell repairs. Jerry Hay has kindly lent me his one of his most it's probably the horn he recorded.
No way.
And I haven't dented that, Jerry. I promise. That is good. That one's perfect. I look after that. I could not love a human baby more than I love that.
That's amazing, man. I'm gobsmacked, but that's incredible. We've had one from Gary Schofield saying, which gig has had the best acoustics?
Best acoustics. There's a couple of I guess in terms of concert halls, Symphony Hall in Birmingham is ridiculous.
Oh, it is good. Yeah,
it's a beautiful room. I quite like the room at the Albert Hall's quite tough. I think it's an amazing room to play in terms of atmosphere, but that's kind of the Usher Hall like in Edinburgh is a bit like a baby. I don't know. It's probably a concert hall, but in terms of in terms of sense of theatre, probably the Albert Hall or. I played Red Rocks in Colorado for the first time, which was a bit of a bucket list moment last year, and that was kind of you're literally playing in a venue in a rock in a canyon. It's just a bit like whoa.
Oh yeah, I saw that, and you had Georgina Bromolo as well. Was that the one?
That was still on the Mark Knopfler tour. That thing.
Oh, was it right?
There's a picture of actually that's quite a funny venue. We played in like an Austrian cave, me and Georgie.
Oh,
we played in an underground cave where there was like stalagmites dripping and all sorts of
stuff.
Random.
That's very random for a concert venue.
Gary, that's a rubbish answer, Gary. Sorry, mate.
But yeah. We've gone through a lot. So how about one more? How about one of your most inspiring moments? So musically, through your career from when you first started till now, one of the most moments that you literally sat back again, apart from the Jerry Hay, you've already used that one. What made you just go, yes, I'm in the right career?
I think I've got Gordon Campbell, the amazing trombone player, to thank
Oh, yeah.
for the first time. That was kind of like the first professional gig where I kind of met all of my heroes, really, like in the UK. So the section was like Simon Gardner and Mike Lovett and Mark Nightingale and all these people that I'd never played with before. And it kind of suddenly felt like just kind of hanging on the end on fourth trumpet for dear life. It kind of, I was like happy as a pig in muck, and it was kind of someone like him who's been constantly throughout my career super supportive, and it takes someone like that to kind of just have a bit of trust in you in spite of all my bad teenage behavior, and kind of and kind of give you like a leg up and have that kind of trust. So that was I'll never forget that kind of gig. That was like a case in point where it was just like, this is like the level that you need to be at, and it just to rub shoulders with them was incredible.
One of the most impressive things I've ever seen was I was sat at Royal Albert Hall, and it was one of those things where I can't remember who was playing actually, but they just stood up and they just said, "We're going to bring you a trombone solo now." And I remember nudging my mate, going, "I bet this is Gordon," and he just stood up, and it was the most surreal, beautiful tune, and it was way up there as well. But he never blasted it. He never needed it. It was like, I don't know. I think I might have ended up on the floor. I slinked out of my chair. It was that beautiful. I was just like,
a lot of us kind of like in terms of sound, a bit like the same way that those amazing Americans that I've met, and it just never overblown, making the most amazing amount of sound from the least amount of effort. He's singing through his instrument, again, cliche, but it was
incredible.
Yeah.
Well, Tom, as I said, I could. Oh, hang on. Someone messaged saying, "Oh my God, you and Gordon playing a duet together." Oh, sorry, I put it up. "Oh my God, you and Gordon playing a duet together would be lush." Obviously, Daisy's written that. So why not? Gordon, if you're listening, let's get that organised. Damien White says a very interesting question. When are you getting married? That's going to dob you in, that one, isn't it?
Oh, God.
I probably shouldn't have put that one up.
I knew they were going to have it. They're both they're a bad influence. They're a bad influence. Unbelievable.
All right, mate. Well, hang on. Yeah, okay. I'll show this one. There you go. Right. I'm not going to keep you, mate, because obviously you've got your night to live. So let's get back together, because it's so easy to chat to you. You're so open, man. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the channel.
My pleasure, mate. It's very kind. Thanks for the offer.
Oh, anytime you want to chat, let's get together. So Facebook page, how else can people get onto you?
Instagram.
Yeah.
The usual,
all the social media stuff.
It's probably not the done thing to give your phone and your email out on a stream, probably, is it?
No, but you don't go under an alias, do you? You just go under Tom Walsh.
Yeah.
Fine.
Some people know me as Tommy, and then all my other awful nicknames that people have dubbed me, of course.
Yeah. So go look him up. Honestly, if you do yourself a favor, go check his YouTube channel out, because it's awesome. And Tom, we look forward to absolutely everything you're coming up with, mate. Please keep me informed of any stuff that that's coming up. I'll smash it out on my channel as well, and make sure you get some stuff out there. I look forward to everything that's coming up with Hornhouse and with all you're doing. And all your sessions. I know you've got a couple of sessions coming up, so good luck with them. Smash it loud and proud. And I look forward to catching up over a beer soon.
Oh, mate, yeah, absolutely.
So thanks very much. Thanks everyone for coming up, and thanks everyone for rewatching, if you are rewatching. This will be up on YouTube probably tomorrow morning. That's usually how long it takes to process these. And I'll make sure a link gets put out. And thanks very much, Tom. Love your work, mate. Stay safe, everyone. Catch you soon.
Take care. Nice one, guys.